I actually had a very long introduction about myself, and I was telling my wife last night, and she said, this is going to sound like a therapy session. Tell them all about your trials and tribulations. Thank you, Shandy Jun, for a wonderful introduction. I actually met with Shandy. Shandy Jun was one of the first people that I spoke to when I went out on my own, because I didn't know what I needed to do marketing-wise, didn't know what I needed to do really as an entrepreneur, because I was groomed to do something different. Like many of us, I got degrees, got an engineering degree, got a law degree, and a year into both of those, I realized I didn't want to do those things. So the question is kind of, why did you do it? Or why didn't you just go for it and just, tough it out like everyone else? So by a show of hands, I don't know what kind of response I'm going to give. A show of hands, how many people here work in a corporation, big corporation? That's good amount. That's my business partner. It is a corporation, but we're not very big. As those of you who work in a corporation, how many of you have thought about leaving your jobs and going and doing your own thing? 3? Okay. You don't want to leave, you like your job. Okay. So I wish I was like that. I wasn't. I thought that I could survive, be a real good corporate citizen, but I just couldn't do it. Deciding what they want to do when they grow up, and I was kind of one of them. But the main reason that was so for me was because I spent a lot of time listening to what other people thought I should be doing, and conventional notions of success. So I chased jobs and degrees in jobs, and then realized that I wasn't happy. So I kind of fundamentally changed my thinking, and it was like an epiphany one day when I was kind of where I wanted to be in my corporate job, and I was driving with the CEO back from a meeting in LA, and he got a call from his wife, and I thought that I was going to be one day like a C-level executive, right? He got a call from his wife, Lynette, and they're talking, and after he hangs up the phone, he says, I haven't seen my wife since last month when we saw each other in Dallas. And he flew in on a private jet. He clearly had slept in his suit, and and now he's going back, finally going to see his wife. And that's when it hit me. It's like, do I even want to be CEO of this 50,000 person plus corporation? And the answer was a resounding no. And that's when I realized that I had been looking at this all wrong. My approach to education and jobs and everything was completely wrong from the very beginning. And so the overarching theme for today's talk is basically, don't pick a profession, pursue a lifestyle. Because if you're chasing a job and you're chasing money, those things are not going to make you successful, in my experience. They just give you a good job and good money. So how many people have asked for and received career advice? Anyone get any really particularly good career advice that really helped them? You want to share that? What was it?
That's a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah. What I noticed is, and I got a lot of advice and I asked people for a lot of advice. What no one ever told me was, and I wish they would have, and this is the reason I'm here, and if you could take one thing away from today's talk, it's this. It's, how do you want your day-to-day existence to be? Right? So like, I never thought about what life as an engineer was like. I never thought about what life as an attorney was like. I saw it on TV, but it's not like that. It's not like it. But I believe now, after this roundabout path to get where I'm at, that if you focus on what you want your day-to-day life to look like, that you will be happy, the money will come, it doesn't matter. You will be successful. And don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. So the moral of the story is to don't pick a profession, pursue a lifestyle. Okay. Oh, and this is a very subjective question. It's really a value-based question. So what someone likes will vary from one person to the next. So this is essentially like a threshold question for anyone thinking about leaving a secure corporate job to do their own thing. And it's going to permeate the rest of these 3 steps, which I promise you, if you follow these 3 steps, you will be a successful entrepreneur. It's so simple, but it's so difficult for so many people primarily because of this first step. Build your confidence. This might sound really easy, but it is by far the hardest element of these 3 steps. And the reason is because confidence manifests itself in, lack of confidence manifests itself in a lot of sneaky ways. You know, it manifests itself in playing devil's advocate, in kind of fear of uncertainty, not knowing what the future holds. But at the end of the day, these things all masquerade as rational reasons why not to do something that you know at your core you want to do. And it comes down to lack of confidence. And I didn't know that. I thought I was a confident person. I really did. But and when my brother-in-law started talking to me about going back into real estate, I made every excuse under the sun for about 6 months to a year. But I realized at the end of the day that it was because I was scared, and I wasn't confident in my ability to earn on my own. Making money is very different from earning a salary, and it takes a lot of learning, to really understand how to do it. Since one of the main impediments to leaving a corporate job is security, stability, but really it's financial security and stability. You might have a family to provide for, you might have bills to pay. Of course you have bills to pay. You might have, high overhead like student loan debt like I did, right? So what you end up doing, so what I decided to do the moment that I figured out that I wanted to start my own business was I had to eliminate my overhead. I spent about a year just saving like crazy, but really not saving, just paying off debt so I could be free and liberated when the time came, right? It was not a fun year, right? So one of the themes to all of this is really my favorite economic concept, which is opportunity cost. Okay? And opportunity cost is, it's an economic concept, but it doesn't have to do with dollars and cents. It has to do with the rules of scarcity, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there's less of something. It means that you can't buy everything with $0, right? So, for example, if I go to the movies on Friday night, if I choose to go to the movies on Friday night, it costs me $20 and 2 hours of my time. So, what could I have done with those $20 or those 2 hours, right? If I am trying to save to go off on my own, and I really want a nice watch, and it's a $10,000 Rolex, I can buy that watch and I can, feel really good about myself momentarily. But how far back has it set me back, right? So my experience, and I think this will work for most people, is just to put away enough reserves for 6 months. It's your ramp-up period, right? 6 months to a year of capital to keep you sustained will be enough, and you won't have to worry about it. You won't have to fight to make money every minute. I knew what kind of realtor I wanted to be. I didn't want to have to sell homes because I needed money. So I cashed out my 401k. Like, who does that? No one does that. The tax consequences, there was opportunity costs in it, but I didn't want to have to be that kind of a businessman. I wanted to feel comfortable, and I wanted to have that stability, so I took the tax hit. So essentially, make sure that you have enough money, capital reserves for your ramp-up period. And then 3 is start your side hustle. I actually thought that I needed to quit my job in order to be a successful realtor. Because all you see is marketing, right? I mean, you have a face on a billboard, a name everywhere, right? And it's the unconventional wisdom that said, no, you can do this. People tell you that you can, or you're supposed to believe that you can. But again, my brother-in-law came in and he said, no, I don't advertise, and my business is doing great. You just need to start doing it. So I started doing it as a side hustle while I was working. So crucial to this whole process, if you're a top performer at your company, or really, if you don't really care, it's even better actually, because so let's say you have 100% of energy. If you dial back your energy, your work energy, to 50% or to 75%, no more than 75%, and use the rest of that, remember the concept of opportunity cost, the rest of that to focus on your business growing what really matters, I guarantee it will take 6 months before anyone really notices. So then by 6 months comes around, you've kind of put yourself in a position where you have to leave, right? And pursue your position, because otherwise you might not get that promotion that you thought was so important, right? So opportunity cost. That's really what it comes down to, and your side hustle. You know, before I felt confident, and this is all obviously attached to confidence. Before I felt confident enough to leave, I did 2 deals, right? And one of them is sitting in this room right now. Your next speaker was my first real estate client, right? And I'm so grateful for that, because you know, it just got me going. And then I did another one who was a friend of mine. I didn't want to talk about business with him, and again, my brother-in-law was like this, you know, on my shoulder all the time. You know, you gotta sell that. You know, if you can do this with your friend, and you get over this hurdle, then you'll be successful. I said, okay, I'm just going to listen to you, and I did it, and it worked out. So then the opportunity cost had shifted away from my regular job, because I knew where I was going. I felt confident. And the tipping point had occurred. If I stayed at my existing, you know, then existing corporate gig, I would have lost, right? I would have had a lot of lost opportunity. So I handed in my resignation, and it was really awkward. So how do you go about doing this, right? The person who I resigned from, he was a corporate being. He was a real like corporate citizen. He is a great guy. But really like institutionalized by the corporate world. And when I interviewed with him, I kind of coined the phrase, I want to be entrepreneurial in the corporate environment. And they love that. I mean, really, but what does that really mean? And so he said, yeah, you know, I know a lot of people who started their own businesses, and their lives are always up and down. Their lives are always up and down. And so he sold me on it. I bought it. I bought into it because I bought into the idea of being a corporate man. So when I went to tell him that I wanted to leave, I literally told him, I said, I'm moving towards something, not away from something. This is the best corporate job I could ever have, but this isn't for me. Corporate world isn't for me. So he understood, and I made him a client too, right? So lo and behold, here's the punchline though. That instability as a entrepreneur that you said you receive, you experience. The company I used to work for is going through, the CEO that I knew so well resigned, and they're having massive reorganizations. And this boss of mine, who ran most profitable division in the company infrastructure, we built the Bay Bridge, building the LAX people mover, which I bid that project, right, and won it for the company. He now doesn't even know what his future holds. So, you know, I think having more control over your future is valuable, and that's the uncertainty. Not having control of your future is the uncertainty to me. So anyway, so 3-step process. Determine the lifestyle you want and pursue it. That's a threshold question. You can't move to step 1, 2, or 3 without doing that. Build your confidence, develop and implement your personal financial plan, and start your side hustle. Scale back your commitments at work. Go to your work. Close the door. Right? Just do something else. Okay? It's really that simple. 3 steps. That's what people think success looks like. Go get an engineering degree, go get a law degree, become a patent lawyer. Lo and behold, you take your first patent law class, it's an elective, your last year of law school, and you realize it's the most mundane thing that you've ever done before in your life. You could never survive as a patent lawyer, but they make the most money when you graduate, right? So that's why I thought I was going to do that. So it's all about your approach. What are you focused on? Be focused on lifestyle. Thank you. Any questions?
Go ahead. He's older.
No, lady. It's wisdom, not age. So what kind of real estate do you do now?
So that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Everything. And here's the reason. Most people subscribe to, I'm going to do residential, I'm going to do commercial. Okay. The reason they subscribe to that philosophy is because they're indoctrinated in the corporate world to think that way. Most residential realtors, the barrier to entry, frankly, is pretty low. You go take a test and you're a realtor, right? And then you market like crazy and you become the local area specialist, and people don't really know if you're doing a good job or not because you've cornered the market, right? In the commercial world, it's a little different. You become a commercial realtor and you work underneath 2 maybe people that are more senior than you. You're a team. You do all the grunt work. Then you move up to the mid-level guy. Then you become the senior guy, but it's very structured. You don't get outside your box. In commercial, you're like you're an office guy or an industrial guy, right? So for us, we have very diverse backgrounds. My business partner / brother-in-law is an MBA. He has a law degree too, you know, and civil engineering, construction management, law degree. Like our approach is different. So like last year, we did probably 2 or 3 very large commercial deals, a lot of multifamily investing, and then probably 65% was single family homes for, you know, primary owner occupiers.
That answered my question too. I was going to ask about commercial real estate, which you covered.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's very subjective, right? What is your value system? What do you want for your lifestyle?
I just kind of wanted to tie in being Iranian American. Do you think that had something to do with why you were chasing after these degrees and this vision of what success is versus the epiphany that you had? Do you think that our culture has anything to do with that?
Back me into a corner with my parents sitting right there.
That's a big takeaway for people here.
Absolutely, the answer is yes. Because, you know, I think at a certain point, I never really thought about what I wanted to do. I had 3 options: doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Right.
And I'm not kidding. After I realized I didn't want to be a patent lawyer, I seriously considered going to medical school.
Yeah.
I seriously considered, but I didn't like the sight of blood, and it was time to start making money, right? You know, at that point, committing to something, and I had a track record. It was the chances of me liking being a doctor after the last 2, right, was very slim, right? So.
Was the conversation with your boss in the car the tipping point or the corner office?
Oh, the title of this talk was "You Don't Want That Corner Office," and that was what got me started. And the conversation in the car was what just was the definitive, you know, nail in the coffin. So at one point, this guy who basically brought me up in the company, you know, took me to the highest rank very fast, right? And I still like him. He's my client, great guy. I went to him I was working like 10 to 12 hours a day, and my office was it had no windows, right? And there was also a lactation room behind me. So people would go in there, talk on the phone, you know, and loud and whatever. The door was closed. They didn't know I'm sitting there in paper thin, you know, tenant improved walls, right? And across from me were 2 offices, large offices with windows. All I wanted was natural light, I swear. And I told him that. And he said to me, if you're focused on the office, you're focused on the wrong thing. And it shocked me, because this person that I thought I really knew and knew me, because he knew my work ethic, right, was telling me that if I'm focused on the office, I'm focused on the wrong thing. And I was telling him that I need to see sunlight, like that I go outside and I'm dizzy, you know, after 10 whatever hours of working without seeing the sun. The irony of that is that the week before I had resolved to submit my resignation, he came to me and said, we're going to do a reorg of the office. They were going to give me the biggest corner office they had there, right? And I said, I politely declined. I said, I'm pretty good with this office. That's fine. I don't want to move twice. You know?
So are you saying that your corporate life has not made any, is not complementing what you're doing now? Did you take away anything from being a corporate employee?
That's a great, great question. So among the degrees I racked up, and I clerked at whatever as a law clerk while I was in school, and I interned while I was in school for engineers. So I did a fair amount of both of those things, including the years that I worked afterwards to graduate. But the best education I ever got was in the corporate world. Best education I ever got was in the corporate world, because I can't diminish the intelligence of a lot of people that I work for, right? Like when you have a room full of very high-powered people, they're going to be asking you questions that you need to have answers for. And you better have those answers. So you learn very quickly to do your research, do your homework, present well, know what the objectives are, do your SWOT analysis and things like that. And I mean, with a company with 50,000 people, politicking is so important that you might hate it. It's the only way to be successful, that and hard work. So you do a fair amount of that, but it was by far the best education. Had I not gotten a law degree, not gotten an engineering degree, and went to work for Fluor, that would have been the best education among everything else. So probably 50% of my experience, my confidence came from that experience.
How do you leverage your relationships into your personal relationships into working relationships with no marketing?
I almost want to bring Milad up here because he's the one who kind of convinced me of that. So I, as I was saying, when I thought I was going to, when I knew I was going to be a realtor, but I thought I needed to quit in order to be, hey world, I'm a realtor now, right? I talked to him and he said, no, all you got to do is meet people. And I'm like, nah, man, all you got to do is meet people. That's crazy. Look at all these people that are spending all this money on marketing. I had a friend who was finishing up his veterans MBA program at USC, and he set me up with a professor, renowned professor of marketing and business stuff, right? And he told me, he said, he's like, I get mailers from realtors, and I throw them in the trash. Eventually, maybe I'll call one of them when I want to sell them. But here's what you need to do: find a local Starbucks, go there and sit there like every day for like a couple hours, and just start meeting people. So that's expanding your personal network. So coming from a USC professor, right, which is my alma mater, fight on, to hear the same thing that my brother-in-law was saying, and I was disregarding kind of before I left for before wanting to partner up, and this, and it never felt right, and we kind of did a little dance, testing each other out for about a year, and then the most important thing is trust and honesty, because you don't want to be looking over your shoulder in a situation like that. But that's a great support system if you can have something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think for you, if you don't have a partner, finding a mentor or a business coach would be very valuable. But for you, what was like the top 3 lessons you learned from the corporate world?
Do they have to be positive lessons? I felt like I was, no matter how successful I was moving off the company, I always felt like, square peg fitting in a round hole, or wherever it is, the other way around. It just didn't feel right. I was like forcing it in. So the number 1 lesson I learned is be true to yourself. You know what you should be doing. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you should be doing something else. You will never be happy. I'm sorry to say it, but I have friends that are, have degrees from Columbia, Harvard, Yale. They are all unhappy working at jobs that pay them very well. And they call me all the time. And that's one of the coolest things that's happened, is before when I would talk about wanting to be an entrepreneur, it was like, it was like commiserated. One corporate guy talking to another about some idea they wanted to do. Now, all my friends are calling me, I can do it, and I'm coaching them through the process. And there have been, several of them have achieved what they set out to do, and they're so happy. I mean, I can't tell you, I would never look back. People thought I was crazy for leaving because of my position in the company, right? None of that matters. Success is determined by your own personal definition of happiness.
This is it. Thank you. Very casual here, as you can tell. But thank you for that testimonial, and I need a commission for that business that you received. That's been 2 years. but just to follow up what he said, really, people like to do business with people they like. So come out, do networking, have people meet you, follow up with them, and you will see the results. So next, we have a beautiful young lady who's helped us at tonight. She's going to be talking about climbing the corporate ladder as a woman. Her bio is very impressive too. She went to University of Oklahoma, where she was recruited the 2nd year, studying petroleum management. And British Petroleum, of course, recruited her, and they flew her from Oklahoma to California, where she worked the summer, and then she was hired by them after she graduated, so she worked with British Petroleum for a few years. I don't know where she works now, but she's still in the petroleum business, and I'm going to have her introduce herself better. This is Neda Hazen, my niece.
Thank you. So my speech is quite the opposite of Omid's, but I think it does have some parallels in the sense that you should be true to yourself. For me, I love the recognition of the corporate world. I love the accolades. I love the titles. And so for me, it's something that I actually enjoy and I get fulfillment out of. So to piggyback kind of off of what he said, it's important to know yourself and know what's important to you. So as my aunt was saying, I worked for BP for 8 years. I graduated, and after my internship, they hired me, and I was hired into this graduate development program. The point of the program was every year you spend in a different role to learn the organization, get a better understanding of the different functions, and then by the end of your third year, you put it all together and decide where you want to be. Everyone told me you don't get to pick your roles. They're decided for you, so just kind of go with the flow, do your best in each position, and see where that takes you. I'm Persian, and I grew up in a very loud and opinionated family, so that never flew with me. I'm not the kind of person that just sits there and lets things happen to her. So immediately I said no, and I was going to take control of my own career. And I think I'm Persian, and I grew up in a very loud and opinionated family, so that never flew with me. I'm not the kind of person that just sits there and lets things happen to her. So immediately I said no, and I was going to take control of my own career. And I think that the most important part of what I want to say to everyone, and this kind of also goes with OCIACC, just take control of your own career. We live in a time of unprecedented opportunity. You can sit from your home and literally just be on your phone and make money. But that's up to you how you want to control your life. So for me, on my first role, I was in Houston, and I was working on the power trading desk in Houston. And after a few months, I started kind of getting bored. And I was like, what's next for me? What do I do next? What do I want to do next? And everyone kept saying, well, you don't get to decide what you do next. The business will decide where you go next, and you kind of just need to focus on what you're doing now. And I said, okay. And I found out we had an office in Stamford, Connecticut, which is only an hour train ride from New York City, and a freshly graduated college student. That sounded really good to me. So I started asking for work from the Connecticut office. And they were first were kind of, you need to focus on your job here. And I said, okay, well, I'm doing my job here. I want extra work. And I started finding ways to get some of that work to come on my desk. And eventually, I started getting more and more of that work. And the head trader decided that he wanted to move me to Stamford to finish my role, the last 4 months of my role in Connecticut. And I said, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm not living in Stamford, Connecticut. There's nothing there. Here's what we can do. You can move me to New York City, and I'll commute an hour each way into Connecticut and do my job, but then also have my social life. And they said, okay. And they let me do it. And they moved me there. They paid for a corporate apartment, and I took control of my first role. Then they moved me back to Houston, and it was time for me to decide what I wanted to do next, or time for the business to decide. While I was in Connecticut, I still maintained contact with Houston, because networking is very important. And I decided where I wanted to go next, and I made sure to meet with those managers, to meet with the people in charge, and find a way to be on the team that I thought was best for me, for my next role. I ended up getting that position, and as I worked through that position, I think the first 6 months is focus on what you're doing now, get really good at your job. And then the second 6 months for me were, what's next? So I found out we had an office in Irvine. And I was born in California, and we moved to Texas when I was 10, and I always wanted to move back. My extended family lived out here. I love California. So I had always been looking for opportunities to come back to California, and this was it. So I extended a trip for Christmas one year, and I asked my boss if I could work out of the Irvine office for a few days in order to kind of extend my trip and not take vacation days, and she agreed, and the manager in the Irvine office agreed to host me. So they thought that I was just doing it to spend more time with my family, but I had a plan all along. I knew that I was going to move out here. So we went to lunch. I went to lunch with the manager out here, and I said, I really want a role on your team. And he goes, well, I don't have a role on my team. We don't typically have GDPs out here. It's too expensive to move them out here temporarily. I don't have a position. I just don't know how I'm going to make it work. And I said, I promise you that if you make it work, I'll make it worth your while. And I started networking with him. I started talking to him as much as I could. I started doing extra work for him, even though it had nothing to do with the role I was doing. Kind of like Omid said, take 70% of your energy and then take that other 30% and do something that you want to do. And that's what I did. And so they created a role for me out here, and they moved me out here, and I got to be closer to my family and be somewhere that I had wanted to move back to for almost 15 years. So that was pretty incredible. And then, I slowly started moving up within VP, and now I'm here. I'm with a different company now, but I'm going to I started reading this book. It's called How Women Rise. And I know the title is women, but I think it relates to men as well. And basically, the authors of the book are two business coaches. They're professional coaches. They've coached CEOs, COOs, industry leaders all across different industries. And they have some pretty clear messages on what keeps people stuck. Whether you own your own business or you're in the corporate world, what is keeping you stuck where you are, and how do you get out of that? So I'm going to share some of those lessons that I've learned. A lot of them really resonated with me as a woman because of the title of the book. But I think the gentlemen in the room will also find some things that might connect with them as well. So the first one is reluctance to claim your achievements and expecting others to spontaneously notice your hard contributions. So how many of you ever thought that hard work pays off and should be recognized on its own? How many of you guys have ever said, if I do a good job, someone will notice? Someone should notice. And you just keep your head down, you keep doing a good job. Yeah, we're all kind of victim to that. It's not in our nature. We're supposed to be humble. You're not supposed to stand up and say, hey, look what I did. Because those people aren't necessarily viewed positively. However, if we don't stand up for ourselves and talk about what we've done, how do we expect senior management or other people outside of our organization to know about us or to know about our achievements? So it's really important to work hard, but also don't be afraid to toot your own horn every once in a while and talk about what you've done. The authors in the book recommended that we all have a 60-second elevator pitch. Be ready in 60 seconds to talk about yourself to whoever it is. And the reason it's called an elevator pitch is because if you're in the elevator with someone, you only have a certain amount of time. If you're stuck in the elevator with the CEO or a potential business partner that you might want to be networking with, you have a finite amount of time to get the point across to them that they should be doing business with you. So what are you going to tell them? Are you going to waste that time just talking about the weather, or are you going to talk about something substantial? So have a 60-second elevator pitch. Talk about who you are, what you've done, what you want to do, and where you're going. And that elevator pitch should be something that you have by heart and you can say it to anyone that you meet. And then the other thing that I think is mostly applicable to women is having a hard time accepting compliments. How many of you have ever received a compliment and said, oh, it was nothing? Or, I couldn't have done it without Shani's help. Or I couldn't have done it if Joe didn't do this, and this for me. Well, that's great that you got help along the way, but you did a lot of that hard work too. And you should accept the recognition for yourself. So that's something that I need to remind myself of too. I've always been told there's no I in team, but at the same time, I have to own my career, and I have to be my own CEO, and I have to determine where my path is going to go, which means I have to speak on behalf of myself and accept those accomplishments and accept those praise that I deserve without thinking that it's taking away from anyone else. The second thing that the authors talked about is overvaluing expertise. So trying to master every detail of your job in order to become an expert is a really great strategy at staying in your current role. So if you become the subject matter expert, why would they promote you? Because they're afraid to lose you. So it's important to be the expert. It's important to know your role, but you don't have to be the expert. Senior level managers know how to manage experts. They are not necessarily the experts in everything or even what their team is doing. They have other qualities and other attributes that make them successful leaders. So don't focus on all of the details all the time, especially if you're in a new position. When I accepted this new role, it's all in renewable energy. So there was a little bit of a learning curve for me. And I spent the first few months kind of focused on myself and researching as much as I could, trying to learn as much as I could about the business, about the role, about opportunities, instead of networking with the people within my organization that could have given me that knowledge a lot faster and a lot easier. So don't get boggled down in the minutia of becoming an expert.
leverage the connections that you have, leverage the people that you have, and focus on the overall picture, because being the expert is not the answer. And then the third point was putting your job before your career. So I think it's important for everyone to know where you want to go. Omi talked about that, I kind of talked about it at the beginning. If you have a path forward, then maybe you can avoid some of the zigzags that Omi has showed in that graph, right? If you don't even have to know, like, today I want to be the CEO of this company by, 2025. You don't have to know that far, but at least know your next step so that you know that every opportunity that you're taking is going to lead you to the next path that you want. So for me, for example, when I was in that graduate development program, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do by the end of my third year, but I always knew my next step. And I always made certain to take the right steps in order to be on the path that I wanted to be. It's okay to have short-term goals and a kind of flexible, broader goal, but know your short-term goals and try to focus on achieving those. And then lastly, this is also especially probably going to resonate with the women. I know it definitely resonated with me, ruminating. So what does ruminating mean? Ruminating is reflecting, revisiting, and even reliving our weaknesses, hurts, fears, or failures over and over and over again until this misuse of imagination darkens our moods and gives permanent place to anxiety and weakens our ability to make courageous decisions to move forward. Get over it. If you make a mistake, accept responsibility for the mistake, recognize what went wrong, and then move on. As women, we tend to replay these things over and over in our mind. I mean, I know I do. I'll go home if something happens and I'll tell my husband, I'll call my mom and I'll say, oh my gosh, this happened at work. I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have done this, and I think about it for days. And what is that energy being used for? Nothing productive. Men are much better at saying, you know what, I screwed up. It won't happen again. Or, you know what, next time I'm going to do this differently. We, as women, tend to focus a little bit too much on those weaknesses and replay those incidents in our minds. So I really encourage everyone to be cognizant of that and replay the incident once, try to figure out what went wrong, what happened, and then move on. And I really need to remind myself of that sometimes too. So to kind of summarize, know where you're going, try to find a path to get there. Don't dwell on your mistakes. Accept responsibility and accept praise for your achievements. And what was the last one? Don't overvalue expertise. So there's this quote that I don't remember where I heard it from, but I thought it was really powerful. It said, people think ideas move mountains, but bulldozers move mountains. Ideas show the bulldozers where they should go to work. So be a bulldozer, have your ideas, but be courageous, like Omi said, and go after whatever it is that you want. Don't just let the ideas sit there, because ideas aren't going to do anything. Be powerful, be strong, and go after what you want.
Take that to me.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions? Sorry.
Yes.
Did you pay them?
I've known you probably since before you were born. And I'm pretty sure you probably slapped the doctor when he slapped you when you were born. So I've always known you to be a very assertive, boss-like woman. For those ladies who weren't born this way, what would you suggest for them, how to become more assertive and boss-like?
I would definitely think that in my personal life, it's a lot easier. Sometimes in the business world, especially being in a field that's predominantly men, sometimes I even find myself struggling to find the words. I think, it's very uncomfortable sometimes to be the only woman in the room and then also have a powerful opinion and a strong voice. I think that for me, I have to really lean on other females around me to encourage me, but it's a constant reminder. I mean, sometimes it's hard. But for those people that aren't naturally, I guess in Farsi you would say poru, and maybe I would say powerful. Baby steps. I would say at first it's more about just showing up to the table and slowly finding your voice. I don't think that you can come in and then just take over, but it's definitely something that can be learned and can be harnessed. Any other questions? Yes?
What is the right way to accept a compliment? Because I do the same thing, oh no, it was, so-and-so did it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it? Just
Thank you. Yeah, if you don't have anything else to say, you say, thank you, I did work hard. Thank you for recognizing. And that's it. You don't have to qualify it. You don't have to explain yourself. A simple thank you just shows that you're accepting the praise and that you did deserve it. Because if you didn't deserve it, they wouldn't be giving it to you, right? So all you have to do is say, thank you. I appreciate that. I did work hard. I earned it. Or you could just say, thanks a lot. Thanks for recognizing me. It's definitely a learned behavior because I have that same issue sometimes too.
One more question.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to come work for Titan Syndrome. So, do you find it difficult to integrate your life with being a mother? People talk about work-life balance. I've heard the phrase work-life integration. How do you handle it?
I think that whenever I was at BP, it was a bit harder because it was such a large corporation. There was a big value put on FaceTime and being present in the office. But my new organization, and I think a lot of organizations these days understand that, especially millennial employees, they do value their time, they do value their family balance. And so now I have the flexibility to work from home. I have been traveling quite a bit, but there is this understanding that as long as I get my work done, nobody is checking my time to make sure that I'm clocked in from 8 to 5. I don't clock in from 8 to 5 most days. So for me, having that flexibility provides for the work-life balance that you're suggesting. It's not everyone's situation. My husband doesn't have that same flexibility in situation, so he is definitely more unhappy. But I think as we kind of move into this new era where technology is becoming more and more important in our lives, I think companies are going to have to start looking at providing their employees with more flexible working schedules.
So you knew you wanted flexibility, you got it.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you.